Cash in circulation increases in new financial week. Draft templates for free trade agreements set to get approval from Federal Executive Council. Plus, oil gains some ground as investors assess banks and Russia situation. This is Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we are reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Musa Abubakar, your guide. And now let's bring you up to speed with business development. The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment is set to present to the Federal Executive Council draft templates for free trade agreements and mutual recognition agreements for standards and professional qualifications for the consideration and approval. In addition, the Federal Ministry of Justice has cleared the bill for the establishment of the institutional and regulatory framework for the conduct of import injury investigations and the determination and implementation of trade remedies in Nigeria. Stakeholders say this will enable the country to take full advantage of its rights and obligations under the World Trade Organization agreements to protect its domestic industries from any unforeseen sudden surge in imports of foreign goods or unfair practices such as dumping and subsidies by the unscrupulous trading partners. This was had a one-week intensive trade negotiation skills simulation course in Abuja, organized by the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations in collaboration with the Overseas Development Institute and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office of the United Kingdom to better equip Nigerian negotiators.
Downturns, because the negotiators are able to negotiate better deals for the country.
Now, there seems to be a wave of ease in the business arena in Abuja, with more cash now in circulation. Let's join Boss today, Abel, for an update.
The central bank's cashless policy brought a twist in the business terrain in Nigeria. The hardship, tension and frustration it brought on Nigerians and the economy made citizens to embrace other options for their business transaction.
When they buy the market, they'll say they don't transfer the money. Then if I go house, I'll check this thing, I didn't see the money. And when I call them, they will not answer me.
You go to a place, you want to get a particular stuff. After you're even satisfied, I even have this amount of money in my own account. But the payment is actually the issue, because the transfers are not even going.
And now that the situation is improving, with weekend operation by deposit money banks in line with CBN's directive, observers say it made some positive impact in business transactions nationwide.
Saturday, Sunday and today we see different, because from Sunday people used to buy things with cash. No more transfer, no more POS. They are using cash and buy their items, and market are moved.
With this money they release, I noticed that even the network is moving very fine. And everything, people are happy. So I prefer let there be a small cash and let's also continue in cashless.
I think this week all this cash crisis, cash scarcity won't be the same again. It won't be the same again. There must be a change this week.
Everywhere now, there is a cash. If you want to buy something, there is a cash to buy it. I'm so happy. They should just add it more so that especially people that are selling. We that are buying at times we can even do transfer and they will charge it on top of it. No, we don't mind. But these petty people that are selling things, some of them have closed their business because there's no money for them to get things. So that's it.
Although businesses are beginning to pick up, but then Nigerians are of the opinion that if the banks can continue with more cash disbursements, in no time the hardship will be a thing of the past. In Abuja, Bosede Ebo, NTA News.
As businesses continue to take advantage of various electronic platforms to carry out transactions, the Naira is gaining acceptance. Correspondent reports that the adoption rate of the digital currency is gradually growing.
Electronic payments like this is making transactions easier, with the cash crunch biting harder on most Nigerians. At this store, customers can pay using their central bank digital currency, the e-Naira, alongside other electronic platforms to make payments.
We have the e-Naira payments. They prepare to use it, as in when we give them how good it is and how faster is it for payments, so they really appreciate it and they make a use of it.
It's among few stores in Abuja that have availed customers the choice to make payments with the e-Naira. The e-Naira is a digital form of Naira introduced by the central bank to enable electronic transaction. This is by using the e-Naira application or *997# USSD code to open a wallet for transaction.
The e-Naira is expected to enhance financial inclusion, support poverty reduction, enable direct welfare disbursement to citizens, support a resilient payments ecosystem, improve availability and usability of central bank money.
Despite enlightenment by the Apex Bank for the public to embrace the use of the e-Naira, usage of the digital currency is yet to pick up, with the International Monetary Fund disclosing that only about 8% of the wallet are in use.
I've heard about e-Naira, but it's not. I've heard about it, but I've not used it before. The petty traders, would they be enlightened as this to have the e-Naira to receive it? Even if I can pay through that channel, can they receive through that channel?
There is more to be done to ensure the e-Naira adoption, as it remains a key component of the Apex Bank's cashless policy.
Well, in 2012, the CBN disclosed plans to begin a transition to a cashless economy as part of the country's ambition to become one of the best 20 economies before the year 2020. After about 5 reversals in the bid to implement the policy, it finally came, but again with challenges. To discuss possible way forward is a development economist, Chris Carker. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, while that report was actually running, I feel obliged to somehow ask this question, that what is it about Nigerians with money? Because someone even said that network has improved. I don't know. Is it the network from one pocket to another pocket, or the usual network? What is it about Nigerians with cash?
Thank you for having me in your studio. I think one truth must be said, whether you introduce cashless, whether Nigeria adopts it tomorrow or in a year's time, there is something about Nigerians. The average Nigerian man likes to feel his money in his pocket. And if it's in his house, he wants to be sure where the position is. That feeling can never change. You will have to do a lot to begin to change the mindset of individuals about the way they keep their money and in what value they keep it. They like to feel their money in their pocket. That's the confidence they have that this thing belongs to me. And not when it's somewhere, I can reach it when I want it. I can have it when I want it, except with difficulty. I think that's just a general thing about the typical Nigerian person.
Okay, the cashless policies actually intend to reduce the volume of cash in the economy. In your own assessment, how do you see the intent and the reality on ground?
I think between October and now, one would say that there's a mismatch between the expectations and the reality on ground. Let's say it is well intended when you then said you wanted to do a redesign of the currency. And then when it began rolling out, what you began to see. I think there was an error somewhere because a lot of people have died in the course of this particular implementation of this Naira redesign and the cash crunch thing. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of small businesses have actually closed shops. I remember a picture I saw online of a woman who sells, one small trader, farmer who sold plantain. There were nobody to buy at her own terms and condition of cash, and she never had a bank account. And so the plantains were actually left there to rotten for days. So even if you reverse it today now and say, okay, there's cash everywhere, you're not doing that woman any good because you need to put her to the position she was before the policy began actually rolling. And so saying cash everywhere is rolling, it's not going to help that kind of woman. But the truth be told is that, yes, the cashless policy we have on ground now, I think there are two things anyway. Let us clear it. One is the redesign and the reissuance of the currency, and one was trying to use that as an attempt to actually begin to implement and push forward the cashless policy agenda. I mean, each one of them is a bucket of problem on its own. So it was actually wrong in the first instance to central bank to want to use the redesign of currency to want to push the cashless policy agenda. In any case, like I once said in your studio here, a cashless economy is an economy where cash ceased to exist. It means the central bank itself ceased to begin to print money. If it ever wants to print, it's a lower denomination you have to print. In our case, the reverse was what we had. The bigger denomination was what we decided to redesign and reprint, while the smaller ones, which people needed to do transactions, were the one they actually left. So there was a confusion in it in the first instance when you said you wanted to do a redesign and use a redesign and reissue to begin to push the agenda of a cashless policy, which in itself is actually a bucket of problem. So I think that's what we have at the moment. It has not helped us. Some say that the implementation of the policy has helped us in a way to improve the value of our currency. If you watch all publication of the central bank ever since this redesign and reissue of the currency started, there was no claim of an intention for it to use it to actually appreciate the value of the Naira. So if it ever occurred, it was a coincidence. That was not the intention of it. Having said that anyway, I think the whole cashless policy itself has got its benefit. I did remember a study I did in 2009. It took the central bank about 104.8 billion naira as cost of cash management itself. Along the value chain, from the central bank to the deposit money banks to the individual, we are all one way or another paying for cash handling. The banks themselves, each time they want to go pick money, has to get a bullion van, has to hire police officers to do it. I mean, the risk of your money being missing with you is actually a problem itself. So the whole idea of going cashless is a good one, but the way we are going about it at the moment, I don't think is the best way to do it for now.
Okay, how should we go about it?
I mean, I would dare to say today that there is hardly any home you go to, you find a box TV, a black and white. But there was no government policy for them to stop using black and white TV. Look, the financial exigencies of what is going on begin to tell you this is the way to go. You find yourself nose diving into it unintentionally. Like I said in your studio once, Nigeria was gradually transiting itself into a cashless economy without the government policy because the international community was doing that. People were actually beginning to, I mean, when the integrated parking and pay system going on in Abuja, nobody was paying cash. You just had a smart card. You put it on your dashboard, somebody came and swiped it. People went to filling stations and were using the top-up card to buy fuel. So many other things people were doing. So we were gradually easing ourselves. In Lagos today, if you enter a BRT, you have what is called a smart card. You don't need to carry cash around. It is preloaded with resources, which was issued to you by the BRT officials themselves. And anytime you walk into the place, you swipe it across a device and it debits you the amount of your transport. So we were gradually easing ourselves into a cashless economy. To force it on Nigerians, it will be a difficult thing to do. And that's what the central bank is trying to do.
Okay, you talked about a woman who actually lost her source of livelihood as a result of this particular policy. I somehow believe if you ask the CBN, they will tell you that this is not an intended consequences. But now, going forward, we have cash now. People are beginning to see cash. How do you see that impacting on the economy moving forward?
I think the truth is, yes, businesses will pick up, people who have lost their job will be called back into jobs, productions will go on. I knew before now the non-performing loan index was actually high because people couldn't meet up their loan repayment obligations within this particular short period of time. Things will pick up, but the truth of the matter is it will not return back to normalcy. Like I said earlier, there are people who have lost their life, people who have lost their livelihood. You're releasing the money and banks are paying and POS is paying, every platform is being used, does not make things return back to normal. The central bank must find a way to cushion the impact of the consequences of the action of its policy on Nigerian citizens. That is the only way things can be done right. So for instance, I mean, during the COVID, nobody told any, I mean, the central bank came out with some policy and said, look, we're going to give some people some soft loans at 1-digit interest rate. We can have something like that. Come up with a policy that can provide people with resources to fall back into business at very low interest rates, if perhaps zero itself, so that life can return back to normal for so many people, because a lot of people have lost their livelihoods, they've lost their loved ones in the course of trying to implement this particular policy of the government, which was more like a somersault between cashless policy and cash redesign and reintroduction into the economy itself.
But you also agree with me that the same cashless policy that we are talking about, there are also people that have now adjust to the electronic payment systems. And I believe also there are a lot of alternative payment systems that are in business today. What's your own assessment on that aspect?
I think a lot of them are actually on ground. The fintech companies have come to stay in Nigeria. A lot of them are actually making good money out of this economy right now. But the problem is that, look, like I said the other time when I was in your studio, the connectivity between Bank X and Bank B is still a big challenge itself. For instance, if I want to make a transfer from Zenith Bank to UBA, I have a problem. If I ever do, you wouldn't see, it's either you don't see the debit alert itself, or when you get to see it, it's telling you a different thing. Something just goes wrong along the line itself. People have lost confidence. In fact, if not that the Supreme Court actually came into this particular matter, Nigerians was running, I mean, we were going to have a bank run. People were totally losing confidence in the financial system. And people would rather prefer to have their money and keep them in the house and spend them as they choose to want to actually do, because it was too obvious that the central bank and the deposit money banks were not performing their responsibility. The systems have come to stay, except for the fact that, look, the interoperability between them, Bank X and Bank B can do transactions. You can't transfer money from one to another one. You can receive money. Some people will tell you, I did a transfer last week. Up till now, the recipient have not received it. And I, who did the transfer, have not received my debit alert. These are some of the problems we think they actually need to deal with before government will come again and say, let us go cashless. Because at the moment, the infrastructures actually needed for Nigeria to go cashless is actually not there. It doesn't exist. If it does, it is highly inadequate for the population.
Okay, there's this argument that the reason why we are seeing problems with payment through the electronic platforms is because of there's so much concentration on that usual payment channels. But we also have, on the other hand, we have alternative payment systems like the OPay and the Money Point and other, alternative platforms. They are working, actually. So, I mean, it's not all bad when you look at it. But how do you assess now the coming of these particular platforms like the OPay and other e-wallets to actually salvage the situation?
Okay, I had your news about the e-wallet thing. I must be honest with you. Like you said, the central bank is doing a bit, except that sometimes it's always, I think there's a lot of political interference in the running of the way the central bank performs its responsibility. It is aware that it is its job to actually regulate the supply, the value, and the cost of money. But there's a lot of political interference in it. Because like your report actually said, in 2012, central bank wanted to say, let's go cashless. I was one of those who said we were not going cashless. What we were trying to do was run a cash-light policy, because when the policy came out, they said, look, I think they started with Lagos and said we're going to go to Kano, Rivers, Anambra, Ogun, and the rest of them. But everything died up in Lagos. And the idea was, they said, look, you can't do more than a particular amount of money across the counter. For individual, they said 500,000. For corporate organization, they said it was 3 million naira. But this was the caveat to it. You could do more than that amount, but for every 1,000 naira you pull, you were supposed to pay 100 naira on it. That was 10% on it. Now, if I have an ulterior motive, I could go into the bank, knowing fully well I had a 3 million naira ceiling or 5 million naira ceiling, and pull 20 million naira. If the motive for which I want to use the money for outweighs the cost of me paying 10% on the extra money I pull it out. And that was actually not a cashless policy. That was why we said what we had then was a cash-like policy. And Lagos started very well. That was when the BRT introduced a smart card of pay and you go. But as we have it at the moment, it actually failed. More like the fourth or fifth time we tried to introduce a cashless policy because the central bank itself has got a lot of political interference. I think in December, first week of December, 6th December, government central bank said 100,000 naira was going to be for individual maximum ceiling, 500,000 naira was going to be the maximum ceiling for corporate organization. Less than 30 days, on the 9th of January, central bank came again and began to change it. Say 500,000 naira for individual, 5 million naira for... I mean, there's a lot of policies from assault. And I hate to say there's a lot of political interference in the way the central banks want to introduce these things. There are politicians who will be beginning to think, how do I run business?
Hey, can I come in?
Yes,
can you briefly assess, before I let you go, can you briefly assess just we've seen so many fintech coming into this particular cashless policy thing, implementation. So how would you assess involvement of more fintech companies?
I think it's a good one. It's because they actually also get involved that central bank can actually bring things like the e-wallet thing, the OP and the rest of them. They are having issues right now. But a lot still need to actually be done. The problem with the e-wallet for me is that, I mean, the awareness and the sensitization is actually not there. There's nothing wrong you walk into a shop and you see an OR code and you can put your phone and just scan it and make your payment directly. Everybody will love to use it as long as it's reliable. But then how many Nigerians are actually aware of these things? People will prefer to go to the OPay where they will charge them, go to an ATM where you stand for queues for hours because Nigerians are not. So we're saying central banks need to do a lot in terms of creating awareness and sensitization of the citizens on this particular platform they have, as it were. But beyond that itself is that, look, it is wrong for you to hear central bank creates a policy today and they say, I think we're having a rethink about it.
Okay, so
we need to change it.
Sensitization and enlightenment is needed. Thank you very much, Chris Kaka. Thank you very much for coming to share your talk with us.
My pleasure being here.
Let's now see global equities market update with Inekako.
Asia-Pacific markets were mixed on Monday as investors continue to assess the impact of the banking troubles in the US and Europe. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index dipped 1.75%. The Shanghai Composite fell 0.44%, while Japan's Nikkei 225 gained 0.33% to end at 27,476.87. European stocks were higher at the start of the new trading week, with cautious optimism returning after a sharp loss in Friday's session. Germany's DAX was up 1.01%, UK's FTSE rose 0.5%, while the French CAC climbed 0.81%. US stock futures rose slightly Monday, putting Wall Street on track to build on last week's gains. The Dow Jones Industrial Average futures gained 0.3%. S&P 500 was also up 0.3%, while Nasdaq 100 advanced 0.14%. African stocks edged higher after a modest advance in Friday's session. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 gained 0.42%. Namibia's overall index added 0.36%, while the other stocks rose marginally.
Well, that's it. That wraps Business Express for now. Remember to send in your comments, observations, and suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channel. Business Express returns Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. I'm Musa Abubakar. Have a good day.